My name is Diego, and I was there when Grace's story changed forever. It was a brisk autumn afternoon on October 14th, 2022, in a quiet park in the heart of the city. Grace had just received the shocking news that her ex-husband was moving on with someone new. As she stood beneath the vibrant canopy of gold and crimson leaves, her heart felt as if it had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. She smiled bravely, trying to mask the heartbreak, but the tears threatened to spill from her eyes. The smell of fresh grass lingered in the air, mingling with the distant sound of traffic, creating an odd juxtaposition of life continuing on while her world felt like it was crumbling. She smiled, but trembled, a beautiful facade hiding the chaos within. How can blood turn to poison like this? What nobody knew was that this was only the beginning of a web of secrets that would unravel her life forever. Just weeks later, as Christmas approached, Grace would find herself seated at the dinner table, struggling to hold back the emotions that surged within her. Surrounded by laughter and warmth, the festive atmosphere was overshadowed by the unspoken tension with her daughter-in-law, who had her own ties to Grace's past. As they passed the turkey and stuffing, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that this Christmas dinner would be a turning point, a moment where the secrets of the past would collide with the fragile hope of new beginnings. Little did she know, the choices made in that moment would forever change the dynamics of her family, revealing truths she had never anticipated. Grace stood in her cozy kitchen, the rich aroma of morning coffee swirling around her like a warm embrace. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the countertops, where flour dust lingered from her pancake preparations. Each year, this annual Christmas dinner felt like a rite of passage, a moment to gather her family and celebrate the love that had been woven through their lives. She smiled to herself as she flipped a pancake, recalling the joyful chaos of past Christmases, filled with laughter, children running around, and the unmistakable warmth that came from being surrounded by family. As she set the table in the living room, the familiar sounds of distant traffic reminded her that the world outside was bustling, yet inside her home it was a sanctuary of tradition. Each plate she placed was not just a dish, it was a memory, a story passed down through generations. She arranged the silverware just so, envisioning the familiar faces that would soon gather around the table, sharing in the moments that had defined their family. However, a familiar ache tugged at her heart as she thought of Carla, her daughter-in-law, whose extravagant lifestyle had begun to overshadow their family gatherings. Grace had always welcomed her with open arms, but the gulf between their worlds seemed to widen with each passing year. Today, she could feel the tension brewing beneath the surface, a silent storm threatening to break. When the doorbell rang, Grace wiped her hands on a dish towel and hurried to answer. She opened the door to find Carla standing there, beaming, clutching a designer handbag wrapped in shimmering paper. "Surprise!" Carla exclaimed, her voice dripping with excitement. "Oh my God, you shouldn't have," Grace said, her heart sinking as she took in the lavish gift. It was beautiful, undoubtedly, but it was also a stark reminder of the differences in their lifestyles. Grace had spent years sacrificing her dreams, pouring every ounce of love and energy into her family, while Carla seemed to glide through life with an ease Grace could only dream of. "Come on, Grace, it's just a little something," Carla said, her eyes sparkling with pride. "I wanted you to have something nice for once." The underlying implication hung heavy in the air. Grace's heart raced with a mix of gratitude and resentment. How could she accept such a gift when she knew it came from a place that felt so out of reach? In the living room, Grace set the handbag aside, trying to ignore the painful feelings that surged within her. The smell of pancakes filled the air, but today it brought memories laced with bitterness. As she continued to prepare, Carla chatted animatedly, her voice a bright contrast to Grace's quiet contemplation. "Did you see the new car I got? It's gorgeous! You'll have to come for a ride sometime," Carla said, her enthusiasm unwavering. Grace forced a smile. "That sounds lovely, Carla." But inside, she felt a familiar tightening in her chest, a sense of betrayal that gnawed at her. "Grace, are you okay? You seem a little off." Carla noted, her tone shifting slightly, concern mingling with an edge of impatience. "I'm fine, just a bit tired," Grace replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The truth was, the weight of her sacrifices was becoming too heavy to bear alone. As the door swung open and more family members began to arrive, Grace's heart raced. The laughter and chatter filled the space, and she busied herself with the dishes, trying to drown out the dissonance inside her. She watched as Ted entered, a jovial grin on his face. "Hey sis, smells amazing in here," he called, wrapping her in a bear hug. "It's just pancakes, Ted," she replied, but the warmth of his embrace provided a momentary solace. But as the evening unfolded, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different. The laughter, the joy, it all felt laced with an unspoken tension. When it was time to sit down to eat, Grace took her place at the head of the table, her heart heavy yet filled with a sense of duty. As everyone settled in, she tried to focus on the conversation, but her mind kept drifting back to Carla and the lavish world she inhabited. It was hard not to feel overshadowed by the extravagance, and the more Carla talked about her luxurious lifestyle, the more Grace felt herself retreating into silence. In an unexpected moment, Carla turned to Grace, her expression shifting from playful to serious. "You know, Grace, I really think you need to treat yourself more. You give so much to everyone else." The words struck a nerve, reverberating through Grace like a thunderclap. "Maybe I wouldn't have to if you didn't flaunt everything you have," Grace snapped, her voice rising before she could stop it. The room fell silent. Grace's heart raced, and she felt all eyes on her. "Grace, I didn't mean it like that," Carla stammered, her facade cracking. But Grace couldn't hold back. "You don't understand what it's like to sacrifice everything for your family. I've been supporting you for years, and all I get in return is this constant reminder of what I can't have." The stunned silence that followed felt heavy and thick, like a fog rolling in. Grace's heart pounded in her chest as she realized she had unleashed a truth that had been buried for far too long. That moment in the living room changed everything. As the laughter from the dining room faded, Grace felt a sense of unease settle over her like an unwanted winter coat. The aroma of pancakes lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of rain on pavement from the earlier shower. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost time for dinner. Her heart sank as she remembered the tension that had already begun to rise between her and Carla. "Grace, these pancakes look interesting," Carla had remarked, a smirk playing on her lips. The laughter that erupted from the guests quickly turned into an uncomfortable silence, punctuated only by the soft sound of wind chimes outside. Grace's cheeks flushed, and she fought to keep her composure. "Oh my God," she thought, "here we go again." David, her son, sensing the growing tension, tried to save the moment. "Remember that time Dad tried to flip a pancake and it ended up on the ceiling?" he said, chuckling. The guests chuckled too, and for a fleeting moment, Grace felt the warmth of nostalgia wrap around her like a cozy blanket. But before she could fully enjoy the memory, Carla interrupted. "Honestly, that's so old-fashioned. Can't we just have something fun for once?" Her tone dripped with disdain, cutting through the laughter like a knife. Grace's heart ached at the dismissive words. It felt like the laughter had drained from the room, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. She turned her attention to the dinner table, where her meticulously arranged plates and silverware suddenly felt like a mockery of her efforts. The contrast between her simple home-cooked meal and the extravagant lifestyle Carla flaunted on social media became painfully clear. A few weeks ago, Grace had stumbled upon a post of Carla lounging by an infinity pool adorned in designer swimwear, captioned with hashtags like #blessed and #livingmybestlife. The irony weighed heavily on her. Carla's life was a stark contrast to the financial struggles Grace had endured, sacrificing her own dreams to support her family. With each lavish photo, the betrayal felt sharper, the resentment simmering just beneath the surface. As dinner progressed, Carla continued to weave her tales of luxury and excess, boasting about her latest shopping spree. Grace's mind was elsewhere, replaying memories of late nights spent working extra shifts, all to provide for her family. The image of the pancakes, now cold on the table, served as a bitter reminder of her sacrifices. "Grace, are you even listening?" Carla snapped, her tone sharp and accusatory. "I just think it's important to appreciate what we have," Grace said quietly, trying to mask the hurt in her voice. "Appreciate? This is the 21st century, Grace. Not everyone wants to live in your little bubble of homemade dinners and cozy traditions." Carla shot back, her words laced with disdain. At that moment, Grace felt her resolve harden. It was a familiar feeling, one she had experienced countless times when Carla belittled her efforts. But tonight was different. She could feel Paul's encouraging presence in her mind, urging her to stand up for herself. "Carla," Grace said, her voice steady, "it's not about living in a bubble. It's about valuing the love and effort that goes into what we have." "Love? What a cliché," Carla scoffed, rolling her eyes. Grace's heart raced, but she pressed on. "You might have your designer clothes and fancy parties, but that doesn't make you happy. I've seen you struggle too." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Grace could feel the eyes of the guests on them, waiting for the next move. "Don't act like you know me," Grace said. "You have no idea what I go through," Carla shot back, her voice rising. "But I do," Grace replied, her frustration spilling over. "I've been paying for your lifestyle for years, and I'm tired of it. I can't keep pretending everything is fine while you throw my sacrifices back in my face." Gasps echoed around the table. It was as if time had stopped. Grace felt a rush of adrenaline, a mix of fear and relief. She had finally said what she had been holding back for so long. Carla's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her bravado faltering. "Those vacations you brag about, the clothes you flaunt. I've been helping you finance that life. My heart sank when I realized how much I've given up for you to live this way," Grace confessed, the weight of the truth finally lifting off her shoulders. The room was silent, the only sound coming from the faint rustle of wind chimes outside. Carla's face went pale, the bravado vanishing as she processed Grace's words. In that moment on the porch, it felt like everything had changed. Grace had finally found her voice. And the truth hung in the air between them, raw and unfiltered. Carla's silence stretched on, creating an uncomfortable void that felt impossibly heavy. Grace's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears as she awaited a response. The guests shifted in their seats, their eyes darting between the two women, unsure of how to navigate this sudden confrontation. Finally, Carla spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You think I didn't earn my own way?" The defiance in her tone was fading, replaced by something more vulnerable. "I worked hard for what I have, Grace." "Hard? By spending money you don't have?" Grace shot back, her voice steady but her heart pounding. "What about all those nights I watched your kids while you went out? I didn't do that just to fund your lifestyle." The familiar ache of resentment bubbled to the surface, but this time it was laced with a sense of empowerment. "Maybe I was trying to escape," Carla admitted, her eyes darting away. "You don't understand what it's like to feel trapped." "Trapped?" Grace echoed, her voice rising. "You think you're the only one who struggled? I've spent years feeling trapped under the weight of expectations too, but I learned to find joy in the little things." The light from the setting sun spilled through the porch railing, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. The soft chirping of birds filled the silence, a reminder of the world outside their heated exchange. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Carla said, her voice wavering. "I just wanted to be someone who mattered." Grace took a deep breath, the scent of fresh grass from the yard wafting through the open door. "You matter, Carla, but not because of the things you own or the parties you attend. You matter because of who you are, not what you have." As she spoke, Grace felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe this confrontation could lead to something better. A chance for them both to redefine their relationship. The guests shifted again, sensing the change in tone, their eyes softening with understanding. "Let's start fresh," Grace suggested, her heart still racing but her resolve strong. "Let's be honest with each other, no more pretending." Carla looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'd like that." For the first time that evening, a fragile smile broke across Carla's face, and Grace felt the warmth of possibility begin to thaw the icy tension that had filled the room. Grace stood on the porch, the scent of fresh grass mixing with the tantalizing aroma of barbecue wafting through the air. It was supposed to be a time of joy, but her heart sank as she watched Carla flaunting her designer outfit, the sparkly fabric catching the sunlight like it was made of diamonds. Grace wore her usual, humble attire, a simple sweater and jeans, but in that moment she felt like a ghost. No matter how hard she tried to blend into the festive atmosphere, Carla's extravagant presence made her feel increasingly invisible. "Can you believe this? Grace is still wearing those old jeans," Carla laughed, her voice slicing through the laughter around the table like a knife. The laughter that followed felt like a betrayal to Grace's ears, and she forced a smile, trying to mask her discomfort. The distant sounds of traffic reminded her of the hustle and bustle of life outside, contrasting sharply with the tension brewing within her family. Ted, her brother, leaned back in his chair, seemingly unfazed. "Oh, come on, Carla, it's Christmas. Lighten up a little." He dismissed her concerns as easily as he brushed crumbs from his shirt. Grace wanted to scream, to shake him and say, "This is more than just a joke." But she held her tongue, knowing that any confrontation would only lead to more ridicule. "Grace, you should treat yourself once in a while," Carla continued, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I mean, look at all the money you save by living so frugally." The laughter erupted again, and Grace's cheeks burned with shame. What Carla didn't know, or maybe just didn't care about, was that those savings had come from years of hard work and sacrifice. She had put aside her own dreams to support the family, and now it felt like a slap in the face. "Maybe if you focused more on what's important, you'd see how hard she's worked for this family," Paul said, standing up for her. Grace felt a flicker of gratitude toward her loyal friend, who had always encouraged her to stand up for herself. But the moment was fleeting, overshadowed by Carla's dismissive laugh. "Seriously, Paul? You're going to defend her? You know Grace can be so uptight sometimes." Carla rolled her eyes, and it felt like the last thread of Grace's composure was about to snap. She took a deep breath, wishing she could push back against the tide of negativity swirling around her. In that moment, she glanced at the distant trees lining the yard, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. That moment on the porch changed everything. She realized she could no longer remain silent. It was time to confront the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was. "Carla, can we talk about this?" Grace finally said, her voice trembling yet determined. The laughter faded, and she could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her. Carla raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "Oh, what's there to talk about? Just because you choose to live like a hermit doesn't mean the rest of us have to suffer." The dismissive tone made Grace's heart race, but this time she wouldn't back down. "Do you really think I enjoy living this way?" Grace shot back, her voice growing stronger. "I've been paying for your luxury for years, your clothes, your trips, everything. And I never complained, but I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt." The words spilled out like a flood, unstoppable and raw. A hush fell over the table, and Grace could see the surprise in everyone's eyes, even Ted's. "Grace, I didn't realize," he began, but Carla cut him off. "You're just jealous because you can't keep up." Carla's voice dripped with venom, but Grace felt the truth of her sacrifices hanging in the air, heavy and undeniable. "Maybe I am jealous," Grace admitted, her heart pounding. "But it's not about the things you have. It's about the respect and acknowledgement for what I've done for this family." For the first time, Carla looked unsure, her bravado faltering. The tension was palpable, and Grace could feel the room shift. She had finally spoken her truth, and while it was terrifying, it also felt liberating. "Wow, Grace," Paul said softly, his eyes filled with encouragement. "You deserve to be heard." But Carla's face twisted in anger. "This is ridiculous! I can't believe you would air our dirty laundry like this." Her voice rose, and Grace braced herself for the fallout, but something shifted in the atmosphere. The table, once filled with light-hearted banter, now buzzed with a tension that felt electric. "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening," Grace whispered, her voice cracking. She had taken a leap into the unknown, and the ground beneath her felt unstable, but she couldn't take it back. The dinner had turned from celebration to confrontation, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As the laughter and chatter of the Christmas dinner filled the air, Grace stood at the edge of the porch, her heart heavy. The smell of rain on the pavement mingled with the scent of barbecue wafting from the grill, creating a strangely comforting atmosphere that contrasted sharply with her rising anxiety. She watched as Carla, her daughter-in-law, tossed her hair back and laughed with Ted, who seemed oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Grace's mind raced, replaying the old bank statements she had uncovered just days before, a shocking revelation of years spent supporting Carla's extravagant lifestyle without anyone knowing. "Can you believe Grace made pancakes for dinner?" Carla had said earlier, her tone dripping with sarcasm. The laughter that followed had felt like daggers in Grace's heart. Now, the weight of unspoken truths pressed on her, and she felt a sudden surge of strength. It was time to confront this facade. The dining room was adorned with twinkling lights, and the table was laden with delicious food, but Grace felt like an outsider looking in. As the conversation flowed, she cleared her throat, the words bubbling up from her chest. "You all have no idea how much I've sacrificed for this family," she blurted out, the words escaping before she could catch them. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her, shock etched on their faces. "Grace, what do you mean?" Ted asked, a hint of confusion in his voice. "I've been supporting Carla's lifestyle for years. Financial gifts disguised as family support," she revealed, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I was helping my son, but all I did was enable this extravagance." "Oh my God, I can't believe this!" Carla exclaimed, her face flushing with anger. "You think you can just throw that in my face? You're jealous of me. You've always been so controlling." Grace's heart sank. The very accusation she feared most had come crashing down on her, igniting a fire she never intended to stoke. "Controlling? You think I'm jealous?" she shot back, her voice rising. "I've spent years making sacrifices for your family while you flaunted your lifestyle. I didn't want this to come between us, but you've left me no choice." A tense silence enveloped the room, punctuated only by the distant sound of birds chirping outside. The atmosphere shifted, tension thickening like the air before a storm. Carla leaned forward, her expression a mix of indignation and disbelief. "You're just bitter because I've made something of myself. You think I owe you something for that?" "No, Carla, it's not about that," Grace retorted, feeling the heat of the moment wash over her. "It's about being honest. I've loved you and supported you, but at what cost?" In that moment, the weight of her sacrifices hung in the air like a dark cloud. It was a revelation not just for Carla, but for everyone at the table. Grace's heart raced as she realized the truth. She had allowed herself to be trapped in this cycle, all in the name of family. Ted broke the tension, his voice quieter now. "Grace, I had no idea." His eyes darted between Grace and Carla, sensing the depth of the rift opening between them. "Of course you didn't," Grace said, her voice steadying as she took a breath.
You've always dismissed my sacrifices. I've been the invisible one."
"The one who held everything together." Carla crossed her arms, her expression softening just a fraction. "You could have told me, Grace. I never asked for your help." "And I never wanted to burden you with my choices," Grace replied, her voice almost a whisper. "But it's time to break this cycle. I can't keep pretending everything is fine while I lose myself in the process." A wave of realization washed over the table, and for the first time, Grace saw a flicker of understanding in Carla's eyes. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. "Maybe we need to redefine what family means," Grace added, her tone softer, filled with a newfound resolve. As the tension began to dissipate, the air on the porch felt lighter, almost refreshing, as if the rain had washed away the bitterness that had lingered for too long. Grace knew this was just the beginning. The path forward would be fraught with challenges, but she felt a strength within her that she hadn't recognized before. In that moment, as the laughter from the dining room faded into the background, Grace stood tall, ready to reclaim her voice and her identity. The confrontation had shattered the illusion, and now, perhaps, they could rebuild something real. "I can't believe this," Grace whispered in disbelief. "I can explain everything," Carla said desperately. "I can explain everything," Carla said desperately. Grace looked at her, the rain softly tapping against the wooden porch, each drop a reminder of the storm brewing between them. "Explain what, exactly?" she replied, her voice edged with disbelief. "That you've been living in a bubble while I've been drowning in debt?" Carla's face twisted with frustration. "I never meant for it to come to this. I thought I was doing what was best for my family," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "You should have trusted me enough to know I could handle things." "Handle what? The truth?" Grace shot back, her heart pounding. "You've been using my kindness as a crutch, and it's time we face that. I may not have been perfect, but I certainly didn't expect to be taken for granted." Ted shifted uncomfortably in his chair, glancing at the two women. "Maybe we all need to take a step back," he suggested, his brow furrowed. "Grace, you've given so much. Carla, you need to acknowledge that." Carla's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but the defiance in her posture remained. "I can't believe you're siding with her, Ted. I thought you understood me." Grace felt a pang of guilt, but it was swiftly replaced by a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. "This isn't about sides, Carla. It's about honesty. I'm tired of feeling like a ghost in my own family." The birds chirped outside, their melodies contrasting the heavy silence that enveloped them. Grace closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on the warmth of the rain-soaked air. She could feel her heart racing, but it was no longer out of fear. It was the thrill of liberation. "I want us to rebuild," she said finally, opening her eyes to meet Carla's gaze. "But it has to be on a foundation of truth, no more secrets." "Fine," Carla said, her voice barely a whisper now. "Then let's start with the truth about everything, not just finances, but feelings, expectations, all of it." "Agreed," Ted interjected, nodding. "We can't keep avoiding difficult conversations." Grace felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps this confrontation could lead them to something real, something stronger. As the rain continued to fall, washing away the remnants of their past misunderstandings, she felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The faint aroma of fresh grass wafted in from the open window, mingling with the sweet scent of apple pie cooling on the counter. Grace stood in her kitchen, staring blankly at the bank statements scattered across the table. Each document felt like a weight tied to her heart, dragging her deeper into a chasm of realization. "Oh my God," she whispered, her breath hitching in her throat as the implications of her actions crashed over her like a tidal wave. She had spent years supporting Carla's extravagant lifestyle, pouring her own dreams and savings into a life that was never hers. It had started as a way to help, to ensure her family felt secure, but now it felt like a trap.
The laughter from the living room echoed in her ears, but it was a hollow sound, devoid of warmth. "I can't believe this," she thought, as her heart sank further. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Grace had hoped to find clarity, but all she felt was confusion and regret. She had thought she was being generous, a devoted mother making sacrifices for her family. Instead, she realized she had inadvertently enabled Carla's behavior, fueling a lifestyle that was rooted in entitlement rather than gratitude. "Maybe I should have drawn the line sooner," she murmured. Preserve the original language as she paced the kitchen. The distant hum of traffic outside felt like a reminder of the world moving on, while she was stuck in this painful reflection. Each step echoed the internal struggle brewing within her. She needed to confront her feelings, not just for herself, but for Carla too. As she reached for a pen and paper, the familiar comfort of writing brought a sense of purpose. She began crafting a heartfelt letter, pouring her emotions onto the page, hoping to express her feelings honestly. "This isn't just about money, it's about respect," she wrote, feeling the catharsis of her words. The ink flowed as she detailed her sacrifices, her heartbreak, and the need for boundaries in their relationship. "Grace, are you okay?" Paul's voice broke through her reverie. He stepped into the kitchen, concern etched across his face. "You've been quiet since dinner." Grace looked up, her heart swelling with gratitude for his unwavering support. "I don't know, Paul. I just feel trapped. I've been enabling Carla for so long, and I'm not sure how to stop." Paul stepped closer, his presence grounding her. "You have to be honest with her, Grace. You deserve to be heard." His words were a gentle nudge, urging her to confront the situation rather than shy away from it. "I know," she sighed, her thoughts swirling. "But what if it ruins everything? I don't want to lose my family over this." He shook his head. "You're not losing them. You're just setting boundaries. It's healthy." Grace took a deep breath, the smell of apple pie now bittersweet. Cultural reflection. In the kitchen, it hurt like heartbreak. The love she had for her family had always been intertwined with the sacrifices she made, but now it felt like a double-edged sword. She didn't want to become resentful, and yet the weight of her choices threatened to suffocate her. As she continued writing, a sense of clarity began to dawn on her. She needed to stand firm, not just for herself, but for Carla too. "Maybe if I set these boundaries, it will help her see the bigger picture," she thought, the words slowly forming a resolve within her. Suddenly, the sound of laughter from the living room erupted again, but this time it felt different. The joy was tinged with something else, an underlying tension that Grace had overlooked. She paused, realizing that the laughter masked an uncomfortable truth. Carla thrived on the chaos that often surrounded them, feeding off the drama she created. "Do you think Carla even understands what I've sacrificed?" Grace asked, glancing up at Paul, her voice trembling. "She might not, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't tell her," Paul replied firmly. "This isn't just for you, Grace, it's for her too. She needs to know the impact of her choices." With a newfound determination, Grace finished her letter, sealing it with a promise to herself. She would confront Carla. As she folded the paper, a sudden realization hit her, a micro twist that left her breathless. What if Carla's behavior wasn't just a reflection of entitlement, but a cry for help? She remembered moments from their past where Carla had seemed lost, desperately trying to fill a void with material things. Could it be that she's just as trapped as I am? Grace pondered, feeling a pang of empathy. That moment in the kitchen changed everything. The stakes had risen. This confrontation was no longer just about money or resentment. It was about understanding, compassion, and the difficult journey toward healing. "Let's go talk to her," Paul urged, sensing the shift in Grace's demeanor. "You're ready." With a nod, Grace felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the difficult conversation ahead. The laughter from the living room faded as she stepped toward the door, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. She was ready to face the truth, both for herself and for Carla. Grace clenched her fists. "I don't want to hear any more excuses." Carla hung his head. "I'm truly sorry." The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the lingering scent of apple pie cooling on the counter. Grace stood in the kitchen, her heart racing as she mentally prepared for the confrontation that had been brewing for years. Today, the family gathering felt charged, each glance exchanged among relatives heavy with unspoken words. "Let's just get this over with," she muttered under her breath, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped down the countertop. The familiar sound of birds chirping outside reminded her that life continued, oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash. As the family settled into the living room, Grace felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Carla was there, her laughter ringing out, a stark contrast to the seriousness Grace felt. The room was filled with holiday cheer, yet it felt like a facade, a thin layer over the growing tension. Grace couldn't hold back any longer. "Carla, can we talk?" Grace said, her voice steady but low, trying to keep the calm before the inevitable storm. Carla looked up, feigning innocence. "What's there to talk about, Grace? You're the one who insisted on making pancakes for dinner." Grace swallowed hard, remembering the bitter sting of Carla's earlier mockery. "This isn't about the pancakes," she replied, her heart sinking. "It's about everything. We need to discuss your lifestyle and how I've been supporting it for years." "Oh my God," Carla snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You're just jealous because I have things you never could." Grace felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "Jealous? That's rich coming from you. I've sacrificed my dreams to help this family, and you think I'm jealous of your lavish lifestyle?" The room fell silent as family members glanced between them, the tension crackling like static in the air. Paul, standing off to the side, shifted uncomfortably but remained silent, his supportive presence a small comfort to Grace. "Maybe if you hadn't chosen to be so frugal, you could have what I have," Carla retorted, her voice dripping with entitlement. "You always act like the martyr, but no one asked you to do any of that." "Martyr? You think I wanted to be in debt just to keep you living in luxury?" Grace's voice rose, surprising even herself. "I've been paying your bills, your shopping sprees, all while I sacrificed my own happiness. I can't believe you would accuse me of jealousy when you've manipulated me for so long." The silence that followed was deafening. Grace's breath quickened, her chest rising and falling as she glanced around the room, seeing the shock on her family's faces. Ted, usually quick to dismiss her feelings, finally looked serious, the disbelief etched across his features. "Grace, is that true?" he asked, his tone a mix of concern and disbelief. "Yes, I've been covering for her, funding her lifestyle while I struggled to make ends meet," Grace exclaimed, her voice trembling now. "And I'm done being the one who has to carry the weight of everyone else's choices. I deserve to have my own life too." Carla's confident demeanor faltered for a moment, her eyes widening. "You're lying. No one forced you to do anything. You chose this." Grace shook her head, frustration bubbling over. "No, Carla, I didn't choose this. I loved my family, I thought I was helping, but it was always at my expense. You've taken advantage of my kindness and made me feel guilty for wanting to be happy. That's not love, that's manipulation." In that moment, the room felt heavy with the weight of truth. Grace's heart raced as she exposed her sacrifices. The years spent paying for Carla's extravagant gifts, the vacations, and the constant need for validation. It all poured out of her like a dam breaking. And she felt a release, a sense of freedom she hadn't known she craved. "Oh my God," Ted finally murmured, his expression shifting from disbelief to understanding. "I can't believe this. I had no idea." For the first time, Grace felt seen. not just as a mother or a supporter, but as a person deserving of respect and acknowledgement. Paul stepped closer, his eyes shining with pride as he watched her stand her ground. "Grace, I had no idea," he said softly, his voice filled with warmth. "You deserve so much more than this." Carla stood frozen, the fight leaving her as the weight of Grace's words settled around them. The argument had exposed more than just resentment. It had unveiled a truth that had been buried under layers of false happiness. Grace took a deep breath, the moment shifting. "I'm done being your safety net, Carla. If you want luxury, you need to earn it yourself." The silence that followed was profound, a moment of reckoning that neither of them would forget. As the family absorbed the reality of the situation, Grace felt lighter, the burden shifting off her shoulders. She had finally spoken her truth, and it was liberating. The apple pie on the counter, once a symbol of family warmth, now felt like a testament to the bittersweet nature of their relationships. Grace knew there was a long road ahead, but for the first time in years, she felt like she could finally start living for herself. "Enough!" Grace shouted, her voice echoing. "Please let me speak," Carla pleaded. "There's nothing left to say," Grace finalized. The air in the living room was thick with tension, as the echoes of laughter faded into an uncomfortable silence. Grace stood opposite Carla, her heart racing. The smell of pancakes still lingered, a reminder of the warmth she had tried to create. But now it felt like a mask over the truth that had long been buried. "Look, I just want to understand why you've been so ungrateful," Grace finally said, her voice steady but laced with hurt. "I've sacrificed so much for you and your lifestyle." Carla crossed her arms, a smirk creeping onto her lips. "Oh my God, Grace, you make it sound like I've forced you to pay for everything. I didn't ask for your charity." Grace's heart sank. It wasn't charity, it was love. Yet Carla had twisted it into a weapon. She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "You've lived this life of luxury while I've worked my fingers to the bone to support you. It's time we talked about this." "Talk? You mean you want to yell at me in front of everyone?" Carla shot back, her voice rising. "You think you can just drop this bombshell and expect sympathy?" Grace inhaled deeply, the scent of rain-soaked pavement wafting through the open window, reminding her of the storms they had weathered together. "I don't want sympathy, Carla. I want honesty." The wind chimes hanging on the porch clinked softly, a haunting melody that echoed the unresolved tension. She could see her brother Ted in the background, pretending not to notice the brewing storm. Typical. He had always dismissed her feelings, adding to her isolation in this family. "Fine, let's be honest," Carla replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've been funding my life, and I've been living it. Where's the betrayal? You chose to do this." Grace felt a surge of anger mixed with despair. "And you chose to take advantage of it. I've been your mother-in-law, not your ATM. The time has come for both of us to acknowledge what's happening." For a moment, the room held its breath. Grace could feel the eyes of the family on them, waiting for the next move. She thought of Paul, her loyal friend who had always encouraged her to stand up for herself. If only he were here to support her now. Cultural reflection. In the living room, it hurt like betrayal. "Do you even see how your actions affect the people around you?" Grace continued, her voice rising. "I've given up my dreams for you, for this family. I deserve more than to be treated like a wallet." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the soft clinking of the wind chimes. Carla's expression shifted, a flicker of realization crossing her face. "I never asked you to give up your dreams," she said, her tone softening just a fraction. "Maybe not outright," Grace replied, her voice quieter now, "but your expectations have stifled mine. I can't keep doing this. I need to reclaim my life." The tension in the room began to shift as the truth settled in like a heavy blanket. Grace felt a weight lift from her shoulders, an unexpected sense of empowerment coursing through her. "I can't be your financial support anymore, Carla. It's time for you to find your own way." Carla's face flushed, and for a moment, Grace saw vulnerability where there had once been arrogance. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Grace replied firmly.
"It's time for a truce. We can rebuild this relationship, but it must be rooted in respect and honesty. No more pretending." In that moment, the air shifted. A sense of clarity emerged, as if the clouds had parted after a storm. Grace could see the potential for growth, not just for herself, but for Carla too. Perhaps they could move forward, focusing on experiences rather than material gifts during future holidays. As the family began to murmur among themselves, Grace felt a newfound sense of peace wash over her. She had made a decision that would change everything. The smell of pancakes still lingered, but it no longer felt like a reminder of her sacrifices. It was now a symbol of her strength. "Let's create memories, not debts," Grace said softly, glancing around the room. Everyone was still processing what had just unfolded. "We can do this together." Carla nodded slowly, her expression contemplative. "I'll try, I really will," she replied, her voice steadying. Grace smiled, a genuine smile this time, feeling hope bloom within her. And as she stood there in the living room, surrounded by her family, she realized that the journey ahead would not be easy, but it would be worth it. At Christmas dinner, my daughter-in-law yelled at me in front of everyone. I revealed that I'd been paying for her luxury for years. And you, on your porch? How far would you go to reclaim your own identity? Grace smiled for the first time in days. "Everything will be okay." Carla nodded. "You're stronger than you know."